Blog Talk Radio.
And welcome to our third edition of Carnivore Radio podcast. I'm your host, Jeffrey Sherman, along with Dr. Eric Lopkin. Dr. Lopkin, I'm sorry the theme continues. There's just no way around it, is there?
No, there really isn't. I mean, it's always another update of where we are in coronavirus, what the effects are, and what's going on.
Here's something, food for thought for you and our listeners. I had a friend who was studying history to become a certified teacher. Time flies, like 30 years ago. And he was saying, we really haven't been through anything. I'm paraphrasing. Meaning, I think at that time it was like 1992, and it was all about, that mild little recession, and people were freaking out, which was actually really nothing. And I guess my point, Dr. Lopkin, is America, do we have the intestinal fortitude to get through a Great Depression? I mean, that's what the indicators are looking at. I mean, you had 6.6 million, and that was because the systems were clogged. I mean, not crazy forecasters are saying 30% unemployment. I mean, we freaked out, being a little older than you, my friend. In 1992, it cost George H.W. Bush, or George H. Bush, his election. It was a mild recession. Maybe 6% unemployment. Then the Great Recession, when we had the buzz back in the day, I'd say the real unemployment rate was maybe 15%. You're talking, Dr. Lopkin, of statistical unemployment of 30%. My question to you, my astute partner, is America ready for? I mean, we've had 75 years of, these crises in comparison were nothing. I'm talking the 70s. I'm talking the Great Recession. You're talking about 30% unemployment. Can we handle it? As that movie said, can you handle the truth?
It's an interesting question. Before I answer it, I want to let our listeners know that they can be part of the conversation. They can call us at 563-999-3693. That's 563-999-3693, because we want your opinions on this too.
We definitely
and you're
do.
Right. It's been a long time since we had major catastrophes. And that's
when
not
you say
by
a long
accident.
time, no, a long time is 10 years. That's a long time. You're talking 80 years since the Great Depression, and that was probably 25% unemployment. And that's when they measured it in real terms, like it was real. That was actually real. Now it's all fake. Who knows what it really is? So, during the Great Recession of 2008, they said it was like, 8%, but we we knew it was probably around 20. Are we ready for that?
Yeah, in the Great Recession, what's called the U8 number, which is actually how they measure the real rate. That's not the rate that's reported on the news. I believe at one point that actually did hit high 20s. So we did, we had that. But we haven't had these crises because every time we have a crisis, we put things in place to keep it from happening again. Unfortunately, that also has the unintended consequence of if something's going to get past those safeguards, it's going to be even worse. Well, this is something that we did not plan for. There's been a lot of talk how Trump disbanded the pandemic team to save money back in 2018. Well, realistically, we were spending a lot of money on something that wasn't being used. But I point out to people, the pandemic team might have been disbanded, but it's not like their work vanished. Everything they had done was still, the plans they had were still there to be implemented. Given that nothing they had was effective, either we'd have wasted more money on a pandemic team, having them, or it basically didn't matter that we had them because we weren't ready even if they were in place.
Yeah, I think that's it. It's a minor thing. I don't think anyone would comprehend what we had in store. And I would have to say, I have a friend, and she was saying how amazing it would be if we wrote a journal. It's too late now, like in December. Yeah, we met for dinner and we had a good time and blah, blah, blah. It's not a dating journal, believe me. But about how this thing all of a sudden went from 0 to 180 in a month. Like, I remember watching Tucker Carlson. I really liked him a lot. I think he's a great journalist, great show, very intellectual, unlike others like Sean Hannity. And I remember it was like, yes, this problem in China, and that was like January. I'm like, wow, that's kind of screwed up. And then like 2 weeks later, it was like, wow. I went out to dinner like February 10th. I'm just about that date. And I was a little apprehensive, a little. You couldn't pay. I know they're closed. I get it. But you couldn't pay me to go out to dinner now if they were open. Okay? I mean, it went from, like, it was in China, and now you look at the death clock, possibly 100,000 deaths. And the other thing I want to bring up, Dr. Lopkin, please help, and could you give our listeners the call-in number if they're so predisposed to do that?
If you want to call in and join the conversation, it's 563-999-3693. Again, that's 563-999-3693.
Okay, yes. So, the point is how it went from 0 to 180, and I don't think anyone was prepared for it. And I also want your opinion on, I don't believe the death toll. I mean, I'm not a, black helicopter kind of guy. Not at all. I just strongly believe that, because I did the calculation, because I looked at the incidence and the death rate. Don't quote me on that. It was like 0.02%. I don't believe it, Dr. Lopkin. I know you're going to push me back on that, but I don't believe it because when I'm looking at those numbers, if it's 0.02%, why is everyone freaking out? Okay? But they are, and they're lining up freezer trucks, and they're putting people in hockey rinks. There's something. I don't think our government's telling me the truth.
No, I mean, all the numbers that they're saying are accurate. The problem is people are freaking out because they're basically being told to freak out. And this is
but you at the hospitals in New York, Dr. Lopkin. I always have your insight and your optimism, both of them. I admire and appreciate. But you don't close down New York City hospitals for 0.02%. I just don't get it.
Well, again, the problem is people are panicking. There's a lot we still don't know about COVID-19. Even the doctors. I mean, there was a study that was released yesterday, either yesterday or the day before. Now, I don't know who did this study, but they were making claims that people can sneeze, and that sneeze can travel 37 feet.
30 feet, I got that.
To infect
of course.
Now, here's the thing. Those numbers were disproven decades ago. And ironically, all of the TV stations, because so many television shows are out of production, they're all running marathons and reruns. Well, just last weekend, Discovery Channel ran a marathon of Mythbusters. And how far and how fast a sneeze travels was actually one of the myths they busted. And they couldn't get anywhere near 37. I think they were at the furthest they could get a sneeze to go was 8 feet.
Mm-hmm.
So
I get all that, but
studies are trying to get people to panic. And I honestly believe it's financial. The media is pushing the story because, they're talking about it because, let's face it, there's not a lot else to talk about, and they've got to fill their news time. But they thrive on making people panic. And this is not new. They've done this for years. I had a situation 2 years ago where my youngest son got the flu. Not swine flu, not H1. This was just the regular flu. But because the news was coming on every night and talking about how many people had died this year from the flu, he was terrified. I had to tell him and explain to him that how small a percentage it was of people that got the flu that actually died.
Well, wait a second. I will substantiate that because I don't know if I've ever had the flu. I really don't know. After listening, now if I get the flu, I am going to freak out because I didn't even know that many people died. I get the flu, I'd be like, okay, I'm home. I'm still doing Carnivore Radio podcast. Yeah, it kind of sucks, but I'm not freaking out. Now I kind of freak out. But this is a freak out, and this is going to change. Go ahead.
And that's the thing. The media is hyping that up to get people to freak out. ABC News had a video clip of a nurse freaking out. She was yelling, "This was not what I signed up for. Oh, my God, this is horrible." They aired that clip in the course of one newscast 4 times. Okay, this is one nurse having a hissy fit, where you've got thousands upon thousands of medical professionals that are acting professional and doing their job. Did they talk about those? No. They focused on the one who was panicking. Because why? Because it drives ratings.
Yeah, but let's do, by the way, maybe you can give our call-in number again, Dr. Lopkin.
Yeah, it's 563-999-3693. Again, 563-999-3693.
I have to believe I'm dead serious about this. I think this is the worst situation I have ever faced, not just personally, but in a broad category ever. The oil embargoes of this, anything you could ever imagine. This has shut down our society. What?
There's no question that this is the worst thing that you've seen in your lifetime, that I've seen in my lifetime, even some people older than us. Because, one, it's a medical problem, okay? It's not just a trade war or something like that. This is a full-fledged medical problem that affects people's health. 2, it's an economic problem caused by the medical problem. Whole areas have to shut down so people can stay home. And 3, it's global. It's the entire planet being hit.
It's the entire planet. Even I actually heard, and this is weird, but 2 people told me this, the vibration of the Earth has actually, right now, is where it was in 1880, talking about activity and, I didn't know we had an impact on the planet like that. People moving about creates a vibration. What can I tell you? I'm not an astronomer, but it's back to where it was 1880. I think also, like people who are concerned with global warming, I think we've set that back 20 years.
Pollution has been dropping all over the planet. All of those problems that people have been yelling about climate change, this has slowed it down. And quite frankly, I have a feeling it's going to slow it down for quite a while. It's not going to reverse it by any means, by any stretch of the imagination. And this is not a permanent solution to it by any means, but it is going to be a major slowdown. So all of those people yelling, oh my God, we've only got 2 years, we've only got 5 years. They were off to begin with, but now they're completely off because we've actually slowed it.
No, I agree with that. I think it's some ways people wax this philosophically that the Earth now has a chance to literally and figuratively breathe. Let's talk about the economics of this. We're not scientists, so we can't do that. Go ahead.
Before we do that, I'm going to stop you because we need to take a break and get a word from our sponsor.
You got it?
Next Thursday, you will be caught in an extreme flash flood.
Disasters don't plan ahead, but you can. Talk to your loved ones about making an emergency plan. Get started today at ready.gov/plan. Brought to you by FEMA and the Ad Council.
Okay, we're back.
Our PSA actually makes a good point for everybody. You should always have an emergency plan. You're not going to be able to plan for everything, but you should have a good idea of what's going to happen if a disaster hits you.
Okay. Doesn't this also, two things. We're going to talk about the first situation first, and that is about planning for disasters. You know, people that are anti-Second Amendment and all that kind of thing, right? Doesn't this really prove that in the end, we have the illusion that big government's going to take care of us, but in the end, aren't we all essentially on our own?
I have never advocated relying on the government if you can help it at all. We're talking about an organization that, unfortunately, is essentially incompetent.
Yeah, but people have the belief. Even intelligent people have the belief that some way government's going to take care of us. And when you look at their response to this epidemic, it's been, no pun intended, anemic at best.
Well,
at
and
best,
here's the thing. Oh, yes. But here's the thing. At heart, these people are politicians. They're not experts in anything. Andrew Cuomo today announced he is calling out the National Guard to take respirators away from organizations that have him so that he can deploy them where he thinks they're needed. Now, honestly, I don't have a problem with him ordering a corporation that might have a respirator to turn it over. But as it turns out, he's taking them away from other hospitals because he doesn't think they're using them correctly.
Well, wait a second, Dr. Lopkin. I got it, but that's one of the biggest points, I think, and I want your comment on it. I believe we'll never be back to business as usual. I believe government is never going to be more powerful than it's ever been. I believe this set the tone for big government. It is now officially, but in the biggest way ever, $2 trillion bailouts, which will bankrupt the country. You know, basically the president in terms of, yes, you can order anything you want. You can tell people to stay in their own homes. You can arrest people like in Virginia for not doing that. This is scary. Your comment, Dr. Lopkin.
It is frightening, and it does put a spotlight on the 2020 election. Are we going to vote for folks that are always in favor of big government? Nancy Pelosi, in an interview today on CNBC, actually said They came together for the $2 trillion stimulus, but government's not doing enough. They need to spend more. They need to take more control.
Oh no,
Honestly,
it's a power grab, and it's
I don't want
liberalism versus conservative.
At this point.
Okay, let's talk about it. We're jumping around, but it's all good. That's what we do. Here's what I really believe. I think if this thing does not get solved by August, Trump is in huge trouble.
If it doesn't get solved, if it doesn't peak.
If it doesn't start going the other way, it's not going to be solved, right. I get it. But if it doesn't go the other way, I think... Go ahead. What's that?
But most experts are already saying New York is expecting the peak in the next two to 3 weeks. It's expected to peak around the country shortly after that. I think the latest we're going to see a peak is late June. However, I think the economic impact is going to last, and a lot of it is going to depend on what we were talking about before, the fear. Like you said, you won't go out. My wife and I, we're getting takeout as often as possible because we want all these small businesses to survive. So we're doing our part. We're going out to grab. It's all done, it's all takeout. It's, there's no human contact anymore with it. So it's safe, but we're going out. I've had meetings with a couple of the chambers. And of course, by meetings, we're doing everything on video conference now. Nobody's in the same room. The chambers are working to keep small businesses, even if they're not open now, keep them in a place where they'll be able to open once, the situation eases. Because that's the key, is if we can get businesses open fast, when all of this is said and done, and we can get people back to work and spending, then we'll be able to return to, it's not going to be, the economic boom that we've had, but we will bounce out of the recession and start to get back to normal. And, I really hate that everybody is using the phrase, the new normal, because this is not the new normal. These are emergency situations. We are going to be able to get back to where we're seeing people, we're talking to people, we're shaking hands. This is not how it's going to be for the rest of our lives.
I certainly hope not, because it's no way to live. My gut tells me that it is going to change social norms for a while. Dating, things that we always took for granted, will definitely completely change. As far as the economy, Dr. Lopkin, again, I love your optimism. I love your brilliance. I'd say if it's not over by August, reading the trends going down, or if we have a relapse in the fall, I think it's a brave new world. It's a book I read many years ago, but it's going to be a brave new world that you don't want to experience.
No, I think the economy is when the economy finally hits bottom, it's going to be painful. We're going to hit a bottom probably lower than what we saw during the Great Recession. However,
it could be Great Depression area. It could be. It could be, Dr. Lopkin.
It's very possible. The difference, though, is that we've already started taking measures to recover. The Fed is starting to use tools. The government is starting to use tools. Business groups like the chambers are starting to use tools. So even though I think the economy is going to hit a bottom, a very low bottom, and it's going to hit hard and it's going to hurt a lot of people, I don't think it's going to last as long as the Great Recession did. I think we'll start bouncing back. The question is, how long is it going to take us to hit bottom? And that actually depends not on economic factors, but on Do we do the social distancing properly? Do we flatten the curve of infection? And
okay, I like that. Now let's talk about that in the last couple of minutes we have. I believe Trump made a mistake about this. I think he needed, it's penny wise, dollar foolish, or the Fran commercial of the 1970s. You can pay me now or you can pay me later. I truly believe he should have shut. Why do we still have air travel? Are you friggin' kidding me? Are you nuts? Well, forget about it. You need to shut everything down for 3 weeks. That's it.
Here's the thing, though. He talked about quarantining the entire Northeast. And Andrew Cuomo and Ned Lamont and the governor of New Jersey, I forget his name, basically told him they were not going to let the president quarantine them. They were going to fight it in court because these governors were more concerned about the federal government not stepping on their power than they were about spreading the virus past their borders.
Okay, and that's a good point because if you shut down those areas, we'd probably be in 3 weeks not in bad shape.
Probably.
I would agree.
If they were able to just quarantine the hot spots, severe quarantine, keep people home, keep people from traveling, block off these hot spots. We can keep it from getting out. We can do the social distancing and minimize exposure. But the governors of these states have already said they're fighting it. They don't want the federal government taking away their power. This is a political power play, and it's putting people at risk.
One thing before we leave. A friend of mine said, and I want your final opinion on this, how does it go from 6,000 deaths, I'm pretty much, just rounding, I'm not sure exactly what the figure, to 100,000 in a couple of weeks? I mean, that's like, whew.
Yeah,
do you think that's overstated, or you think?
I don't know if it's overstated because I don't know the methodology. I don't know how they're counting it. Are they just assuming that these people had coronavirus? Because we know that they're too backed up to have actually done autopsies on all these people. So if they're in a hospital, they've been diagnosed and they pass away, yes, we know they died of coronavirus. But if somebody is sick at home, they haven't gone to a hospital, they've been told to stay quarantined and they pass away, if they haven't been tested, we don't even know if it's actually coronavirus that they had. So there's a lot of problems in how we're figuring out numbers. And I mean, not to be overly optimistic, the numbers could be much better than the reporting, but they could also be much worse.
It's not for the squeamish. We do agree with that, Dr. Lopkin, correct?
Absolutely.
So this is our third Carnivore podcast, and it's gone really well so far. We've had a couple of really good guests. Today we just kind of went back and forth with each other, which I think was more than appropriate. I think we need some more listener participation, and we certainly would appreciate that, correct?
Absolutely. We want people calling in. We want to know what your opinions are. What stories have you heard? What are you guys going through? And we will be back here next Friday at 4 o'clock. You can listen live at blogtalkradio.com/Carnivore Radio. You can catch the replay and listen on demand to this podcast, as well as our Carnivore Bites podcast at Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Spreaker, and wherever you find podcasts. We're all over the place. Listen to us on demand.
Fantastic, Dr. Lopkin. Any final thoughts?
Stay safe. Hunker down. Do what you can to stay healthy.
Fantastic. Does this conclude our edition?
It does, and we will see you all again next week.
Thank you very much, Dr. Lopkin.